Thanks again for inviting me here to speak. So, as I said yesterday, when I was asked to talk at Farrier Focus, I had a look on Google, looked for some ideas for doing presentations, and I found Amazon do a great presentation starter pack. So if I run off halfway through, you know the modem hasn't quite kicked in. If you're a pop as I'm at the door, then duck. So I'm going to be talking about clogs today and applications of clogs. And they were first used, plywood was first applied by Dr. Mike Stewart, which is what the Stewart clogs are now, or who the Stewart clogs are now named after. And what I'm mainly going to cover is applying clogs for laminitis, but I will then go on and just cover a few more pathologies that I have used clogs for, various materials and different ways they can be applied. And Dr. Mike Stewart said, the successful treatment of this condition, or laminitis, it's dependent on the amount of damage to the laminae and our ability to minimise the stress on the damaged laminae with therapeutic shoeing. And each case of laminitis provides us with a multitude of problems, which is where clogs can offer many, many advantages. So here's just a selection of clogs. In the top left, we've got the newer black EDSS Stewart clogs, the brown EDSS Stewart clogs, and then a replica of Mike Stewart's original wooden shoe. The top right is the newest EDSS shoe out, and it's the Freedom shoe, which is basically an aluminium clog. And then bottom left is a pair of clogs that Matt Staples made. He was working with a vet at Lip Hook and applied a pair of clogs for laminitis. And so yeah, he made these out of marine ply. And then the bottom right, these are called EVA clogs. And I'll cover more on all of these a bit further into the presentation. So to start off with, for those of you that didn't attend yesterday, I talked about foot mapping and gradient distortions. But this photo shows a clear map of the foot. I've located the proximate centre of articulation, the tip of pedal bone, and the ideal or the optimum point of breakover. And mapping is a great tool for the application of any shoe, but in particular for the application of clogs. So now I've trimmed the foot back, removed the distortions, got a good solid platform in the back of the foot, and then start hoof testing the foot. And any areas of the foot that are sore can then be marked with an X, just for your reference later on. Once I've got the foot prepared, I put Red Horse Arty Mud into the commissures and across the sole. And Arty Mud, it's clay-based, and it continues to remain active throughout the shoeing cycle, and it's a great antibacterial layer. I then apply the TFP pink dental impression material. I find this is a good consistency. It's fairly equal with the consistency of the horny frog. And also with impression material is once it's set, that is how hard it stays. It doesn't continue to get harder over time like some of the pouring pad materials. And here just shows you a variation between two former hoof clogs that were applied. The one on the left had Arty Mud in, and the one on the right didn't have Arty Mud, and you can see the black necrotic horn tissue that left residue on the solar surface, and it stunk as well. Whereas the one on the left, you don't get that pungent smell. So once the impression material is in, I tape a compression plate onto the bottom of the foot, and then I load the limb. And this evenly distributes the impression material, and it displaces any excess material so that you don't get hot spots underneath the clog where you've got sort of a more condensed area of material. And then I leave it to cure for a few minutes. Cures faster in the heat than it does in the heat of summer than it does in the winter. So if you want to warm it up before you apply it. And then the impression material can be cut away from the sore area of the toe, which is a great advantage. And you can see here that with my foot map that the optimum breakover line lines up with the point of breakover on the solar surface of the clog. But also the recess in the solar surface of the clog lines up with the painful area in the toe, especially when you've got prolapse into the sole due to rotation. I then drew a pilot hole down through the wall where I would normally apply nails. For this size foot, and because she was on box rest, just one screw each side was enough. So I just drilled one hole each side and then put a screw down, screw into the clog, and then lock the back of the foot with another couple of screws into the heel of the clog itself. Then apply an acrylic glue around. Wrap your J-Meg wrap or your Serum wrap around it, and it gives you a nice finish. And you can see from the caudal photo how it's locked the heels together, and recovering laminitics seem to really like the restricted movement in the back of the foot. And then this way just shows an alternative method rather than using the acrylic glue, and this is my preferred method, and this is using a hoof cast instead of the glue. And this is just a solar view of the finished clog. So from this radiograph you can see that there's great concavity below the tip of P3 in the painful area, and you can also see that the ground bearing surface, either side of the centre of articulation, there's a good 50-50 ratio. And the point of breakover is almost below the tip of P3, so this greatly reduces the strain on DDFT while they're moving. So the clogs are designed with a full roller motion, and there's 3 planes to them. There's the beveled toe, the flat ground surface, and the beveled heel. So the bevel all round is designed to reduce laminal torque to the compromised hoof, and it creates a highly efficient leverage reduction shoe that can easily be modified to each individual horse. The flat ground surface plus the impression material gives a solid base, and it helps to distribute the load forces evenly, primarily in the back half of the foot, across the frog, the bars, and even in the commissures and the sole. And in laminitis, this helps the solar blood vessels to regenerate, increasing blood flow, which in turn promotes new sole growth to protect the pedal bone. Then the beveled heel is designed, it reduces torque and shearing during movement by softening the landing phase, and as we know that horses with laminitis, because of the painful toe area, they generally land heavy heel first. And then all 3 planes to the shoe, it helps to redistribute load on the internal structures, creating an internal massaging effect which increases blood flow to the recovering laminae. And then here's just a short video of the EVA clogs, and this is a pair that Farrier in Canterbury, Peter Pears applied, and it just shows how the EVA material on the ground surface, which ethylene vinyl acetate, it's designed so that horses can modify the ground surface of the shoe to maximise their own comfort. And then this video just shows that not all EVA is created equal. This was some EVA that I'd bought. I had a go at making a pair of EVA clogs myself. Screwed them onto this horse, but it was far too soft. She just compressed straight into it. So moving on, this was a horse that came into a local vet clinic, and he'd got pressure necrosis of the solar corium, which caused abscessing from the medial toe quarter around to the lateral heel. And this was due to sinking and rotation of the pedal bone. And at first the vet wanted me to go in and just apply a hospital plate with a bar shoe. So I put a bar shoe on, packed the back with dental putty, and then they'd got a hospital treatment plate that could be removed so that they could change the dressing daily and just treat the infected area. But the horse started to crash after about 8 days, so we had another x-ray, and this is what we see. So you can see distinct rotation of the pedal bone, but also what's really evident here is there's a massive gas shadow below the solar surface of the pedal bone, which shows infection. So I was called back in, the horse was sedated and put under nerve block, and we removed the sole and the frog, and this was basically back to like not even granulation tissue. Finger and thumb squeezing the heels, and the whole foot was just flexing. There was no stability there at all, and to be honest, I thought he was probably gonna come through the bottom of the foot. The foot had the consistency of jelly, so I packed it with dental impression, and the foot was dressed. So I wanted the stability of a clog, but I wanted something that had a removable treatment plate. So I came up with the idea after speaking with my cousin of making a hospital clog. So I bought some double nail pads from TFP. They're about 1/2 inch thick, and they come in two consistencies. One is a rigid plastic and the other is a softer rubber. So I had the rigid plastic against the foot surface for the stability, and then the rubber surface on the ground just to give him some grip. Cut this window in the foot surface of the clog, and then modified the rubbery pad to be screwed onto the bottom so it could be removed for the dressings change. And this was the x-ray of him once I'd got this clog on, and you can see there's not a lot below the tip of P3. But what was worrying me was the amount I'd got out the toe where I'd built this clog to try and stabilise the foot, and this was adding excess leverage as the horse was moving. So I removed the toe portion of the clog, and as you can see now, I've got the point of breakover back again to almost in line with the tip of pedal bone. And this greatly reduced the torque on DDFT. So after a couple of, probably 3 or 4 weeks of the hospital clog being applied, it was removed. All the old dry blood from the granulation tissue can be seen. I cleaned the foot and trimmed the heels back again to get a good platform at the back of the foot. The foot was packed again with arty mud and dental impression material. And now I've got a pair of steward clogs on him, locked the heels in, and this one I finished with casting tape. But here's the photo of the foot before the steward clog was applied, and if you look at the date, the 27th of September, here's it with the clog applied, and then the 12th of November, how much solar depth is there now? That was 5 weeks and 5 days of that clog being applied. And then this was the most recent shoe-in, which was about 5 weeks ago, I think. I think he's due to be shod again next week. And just a short video of him moving around. And I think, considering the damage that was done to his foot with the case of rotation, I think that's yes, yeah. I think it's quite a good recovery to that foot. So that was laminitis, and just moving on to some more of different cases I've applied clogs in. This horse, he wasn't actually given an MRI, but with his level of lameness, it was pretty obvious he'd got navicular, and I got a pretty good suspicion on leverage testing him that he'd got collateral ligament damage. So this pair of clogs I applied, I screwed a wedge pad to the solar surface of the clog, and these clogs I nailed on. I've got a photo a bit later which shows you how I modified the pad of the clog. Because he was sore through the frog area, I've cut a recess in the pad so that I wasn't giving positive load to the frog. And then this horse, he was diagnosed laminitis, but he'd also got severe anterior posterior and a severe mediolateral imbalance. So on his x-rays there was rotation as well. So I nailed these clogs on, and again I used a wedge pad just to increase his angle. I got a feeling he'd got more going on in his foot than just navicular, than just laminitis. And then this is a quarter horse, chronic osteoarthritis of his knee, very restricted flexion in his knee, and he was retired due to lameness. So I had a chat with the customer, and I nailed a pair of clogs on, and it was mainly for the purpose of this presentation, just to show a different pathology. And he actually started coming back into a bit of light hacking work, and he's still being hacked again now. But because he wants to stand with his right front, with his knee bent due to the arthritis, I've just modified the lateral side of the clog just to soften the break over to the lateral side. And then this is a pair of clogs I made out of inch-thick marine ply. This was for a Shire horse that came into the vet's clinic, and it was a rescue case, and it had had multiple abscesses bursting out of the coronary band at the toe, also out of the medial heel. And the previous owner had been attempting to trim the foot himself, or their self. So the sole had prolapsed and he was walking on the sole of his foot. This was a pair of hinds I made, so 7.5 inches across. And it just allowed me to pack the back of the foot again with impression material. This time I used a yellow impression material from EDSS, which is a much harder consistency, which is great for the heavier horses, and it just gave him that little bit of support he needed in the back part of the foot just to lift his toe at the sole off the ground. And then this was screwed, wrapped, and then where I've cut the toe away, I just put a bit of acrylic glue round just to give it a bit more stability. This is a little Welsh pony I shoe. Chronic laminitic, equine metabolic syndrome, and during the summer she gets very footy on the hard ground. And these are actually directly glued to the sole with a urethane glue. Again, just in the connoisseurs, I put some arty mud just to stop build up of bacteria. Because it's completely loaded across the entire bottom of the foot, you're not creating hot spots, and she seems to find a lot more comfort in these. And then this is the same pony. Before I started direct gluing the double nail pads to the bottom of the foot, I was actually building the clogs directly onto the foot with a urethane glue, equivalent of Superfast or Hoof Tight. And again, she's had these on for about 2 years now, and it gives her far better levels of comfort. And this is another ELPO member, Chris Nicholas. He'd got this Shire horse to shoe. He'd got high and low ring bone and negative P3. So Chris made this pair of clogs out of HDPE, which is high density polyethylene. And before he applied these, the horse was 4/5 lame on the turn. And after the first application of these, he's just reset these in the last couple of weeks. The horse is down to about 2/5 lame on the turn now. And I put this in because I do apply spider plates to the odd horse, and I think they work very similar to a clog, the way they load the foot. It's centrally loading, you pack the foot with the impression material, but what it lacks is or in this case, what it lacks is the omnidirectional breakover, but that can be put in. But if any of you have applied these, then you probably know the weight of them. Once you've welded the spider plate in and then you've got the impression material, you've created a pretty heavy shoe on the bottom of the foot. So just showing you some modifications that can be done to clogs. This was a horse that had high ring bone, and if you start wedging heels on horses with high ring bone, they don't seem to like it. But reducing the breakover back past the tip of pedal bone, but still having a good platform in the back of the foot, it just allowed him during the dynamic, whilst he's moving, it just eased his comfort. And this was a photo that was taken at a level 4 lameness clinic in Colorado. And then the top left, this was the clogs I applied in my level 4 certification. This was a Western discipline horse. I think he was either a cutting horse or a hill horse. Again, he was 4/5 lame on the turn, so suspect there was collateral ligament damage. He was 2/5 lame on the straight. So once the feet were trimmed, I nailed a pair of these clogs on, and on their surfaces out there where they're on dirt tracks, this modification is great, but it doesn't seem to work as well over here on our concrete. It can create muscle fatigue higher up on the foot. But he went from 4/5 on the turn down to 2/5 immediately after the application of the clogs. The bottom left picture, you can't see it too well, but there's a plastic rail I've screwed to the solar surface of the clog, and this is just to give the horse a bit of medial elevation. And again, this is something that's great if you do any leverage testing, and it goes hand in hand really well with applications of clogs, because you can really see where the horse likes the limb being loaded and unloaded. And then the one on the right was a horse, this was a navicular horse, large bulbous frog, 6.5 inch foot. So I made these clogs with 2 layers of 3/4 inch ply, He looked like he'd got platform shoes on by the time he was done. But I had to cut the frog area out, and then I screwed the other bit of 3/4 ply to the bottom, and then just filled in the bottom with a soft impression, with a soft sole pack pour-in pad material, and this was just enough to give the frog support, but without giving it too much positive pressure. So this is the clog I applied, which I said about with the navicular horse. Cut the frog piece out in the wedge pad, screwed it to the solar surface of the clog, and then nailed it on. And he's had these clogs nailed on for about 18 months now. Not the same pair, obviously. Just another horse. I'd screwed some aluminium rails to the bottom of this clog, and he's actually got a wedge pad on the foot on the clog as well. So I've given this horse probably about 10 degrees of lift, and this is great if you've got sort of DDFT problems, and it also with where the rails are positioned, you can greatly reduce the leverage or increase the leverage reduction. That's just duplicate slide. So this is just some mainly shoes I've made, and then a couple of other shoes, and it's just showing what clogs can be applied for. They're not going to replace these shoes. I still love traditional Farrier, but the top left shoe is a rim shoe for a pedal fracture. A rocker bar shoe in the middle at the top, egg bar, straight bar, half heart bar, raised heel shoe, and then 2 leverage reduction shoes. And these are all shoes that clogs can be applied instead of. So just some of the disadvantages of clogs. Nailing them on. They can be a bit of a pain to nail on. They take a little bit of getting used to. Obviously you can't stamp nail holes in them, so you're drilling holes and then countersinking them for the heads to sit in. They're awkward to clench up, so I've recently modified a pair of low nail clenching tongs, ground the bottom jaw back and ground them to a point, and the point of the bottom jaw sits nicely on the bottom of the head now, so I don't keep pushing the nails back through down out the nail hole when I'm trying to clench. On certain surfaces they provide less grip, so you can screw in studs into them to give them a bit more grip, but obviously you don't want to give them too much grip for horses that are sawing their feet and end up jarring them up. It adds height to the feet, and over time, especially if you refit them, they can start to invert. But when we look at the advantages of them, the mechanics, they've already got great mechanics in them, and you can increase the mechanics in the bottom of them. There's no end of mechanics you can no end of mechanics you can add to them. They're multi-directional. They've got short breakover. They're easily modified again to create your mechanics into them. They add loads of protection to the solar surface of the foot. They give loads of support to the foot, especially when you're screwing and casting or screwing and gluing them. The stability they give the foot, especially when you've got a compromised foot like the one that had foundered in the hind foot. They're lightweight, so when you're making your spider plates and you're greatly increasing the weight on the bottom of the foot, clogs aren't that heavy. They can be easily made out of various materials, as I've showed you. So there's your multiple materials. They increase the hemodynamics of the foot, especially when they're applied with your impression material. And I think that X-ray I showed you is a great example of just how much they've increased the circulation in that foot for that horse to grow that much sole, a thoroughbred, in 5 weeks, 5 days, 6 weeks. I think it's pretty amazing. They can be applied in a non-traumatic way, so screwing and gluing or screwing and casting them. And they can be applied for multiple pathologies. So the pathologies they can be applied for: acute laminitis, chronic laminitis, ring bone, navicular, arthritic knees, collateral ligament lesions, tendon injuries, pedal osteitis, pedal fractures, and even negative palmar angle P3. So just to finish off, if you haven't applied any clogs yet, then I highly recommend that you give them a go, because I think you'll be surprised with just how much comfort they can provide. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Big thank you there to Dan. Definitely food for thought there and different approaches, I think, for most of us in here to look at. Really appreciate you coming to speak about it. Has anyone got any questions?